Hello and welcome into this special preview of Tennessee versus Syracuse in Atlanta. It's Tucker Harlan here for the Voice of College Football Network. If you like what you see here, please like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football. We are live every Monday night at 8 Eastern Time. We would appreciate it if you would share it with rival fan bases too. We always like finding new people no matter where they are. I found someone new for this week. As you guys can probably see, Jordan is not with me, but I have a very special guest, Jackson Holzer of Locked on Syracuse. Jackson, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing really well, man. Let's get right into it. Let's preview this matchup.
Yeah, man, it's like the weather down here in Tennessee has it's changed for us just so that we can get into college football season now. It was like 95 2 weeks ago. Now it's like a nice room temperature outside. You don't want to leave when you go outside, which is so strange because August is usually the hell's doorstep down here, which is it's wild to see that change. It's much nicer up there in New York this time of year. I was actually up there in upstate New York back in July. It was great. It was really great going up there compared to down here.
100%. I actually grew up in South Florida, by the way. I am very familiar with the southern heat. It is
It's even worse down there.
Fun, but you know what? Isn't that SEC football? Isn't that what it's all about? 80, 90, 100,000 fans in one stadium, and it's 95 degrees, and everyone's sweating bullets out there. Isn't that really what SEC ball is about? I mean, let's do this. Let's go. It's college football season. Who cares about the weather? Let's play.
Yeah. September, it can be like that, but it'll cool down, though. It cools down here in Tennessee for sure. We have seasons. Yeah, so looking into this matchup now, Tennessee playing Syracuse in Atlanta. These schools are somewhat acquainted with each other now. Just in the athletics realm, having played a couple years in a row in basketball now, they're actually going to play a game up there in Syracuse. So it'll be fun to keep that going. I do wish, though, that Syracuse would improve a little bit in basketball and get back to something like they used to be, because it'd make it a little bit more fun for everybody involved, I feel like.
Yeah, I think Syracuse basketball, switching topics, I guess, is one of those brands where you might hate them, you might love them, but I feel like the sport is better when Syracuse is good. And you get that fan base going and you get that dome going. They have like the largest stadium in the country for basketball. It's nuts. Everyone remembers that 2014 game between Duke and Syracuse. Coach K coming to the dome, Jim Boeheim at the peak of his powers as a head coach of Syracuse. It's been downhill for quite a while now. I'm not sure about how Syracuse basketball is going to be this year. I'm hoping they can get back into the NCAA tournament, because if not, there's going to be a lot of changes with the roster and probably the coaching staff as well. And I hope they can at least keep it competitive with Tennessee this year, because last year the game wasn't even worth playing. If we're being honest, JJ Starling, he was announced that he was out before the game. And at that point it was all right. I guess they're just going to roll over and they're just going to play for 40 minutes and they're going to get on a flight back to Syracuse at that point. It wasn't really fun, that game. So I'm hoping that it's more competitive this time around.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt watching that game, to be completely honest. And we come from the era in which Syracuse was that trendy 11 seed that could make it to the Sweet 16 every year. You did not want to see them if you were a higher seed. And unfortunately, you could be right about the coaching staff changes. But looking on the football side, they did make a very positive change to their coaching staff within the last couple seasons, and that was bringing in Fran Brown. Jackson, how has the energy changed around Syracuse football as opposed to what was going on under Dino Babers those last few years?
Good question. So Dino Babers, great person, got nothing bad to say about him. But as far as a football coach, he left a lot to be desired, if we're being honest with you. And it goes beyond just the X's and O's. It was also a mindset. It was a mentality. It was a lot of excuse making. It was, we're in the Northeast. We can't get good football players to play for us. We're playing really good teams. The opponent is just too much. They're too much for us. We're beat up. There's too many injuries, this, that, the other. It was just constant cycle of excuses. And yeah, there was that 110-win season that they had in 2018, which was fun for everyone. But aside from that, maybe a couple of bowl appearances here and there. 8 years, it was not necessarily a great tenure for Syracuse. And then it was a complete energy switch bringing in Fran Brown. Whether or not he achieves his goal of going undefeated and winning a national championship one day for the program, well, we'll find out. But he came in here with that mindset of, yeah, we're Syracuse football. And why can't we be good? Why not? Why not Syracuse? What's wrong with Northeast football? Is there a problem with that? NIL, this, that, and the other? Okay, we'll get more NIL. All right, we can't recruit players to play in the Northeast? That's not true at all. They just got a 5-star down in South Florida. They took him from Miami. They took him from all the big brands. They took him from Michigan and said, hey, you're going to play for Syracuse football in 2026. Of course, I'm referring to Calvin Russell, who could have gone anywhere in the country. I'm not sure if Tennessee offered him or not. Chances are they probably did. You know why? Because he's a really excellent football player, and he chose Syracuse. So Fran Brown comes in, new mindset. Our goal is to win a national championship. First season was a really strong year. They go 9-3. They were very, very close to being the ACC version of an Indiana type team, where you look at some of their losses, and aside from Pitt, I mean, they could have flipped that Stanford loss. They probably should have beaten them. They could have flipped that Boston College loss. They probably should have beaten them. They beat Miami at the end of the season. They proved they can punch above their weight and maybe beat a team on paper that has more talent. And overall, they go 10-3 after a Holiday Bowl win. Now you get into year 2. This is a different test for Fran Brown and Syracuse, because think about what I just said. All the good stuff about Syracuse in 2024, wipe it away, because most of the players from that team are gone. If we're that's just the reality. Most of them are gone, whether it's transfer portal, sending a bunch of players to the NFL, which for Syracuse is not necessarily an annual occurrence, getting over 10 players into the National Football League after all the undrafted free agents were signed. We'll see what happens. They got a brand new quarterback, brand new offensive line, lots of new receivers, a running game that's unproven, but guys that were here last year, and a defense, which was not very good last season, that's going to have to be a lot better in order to beat this Tennessee team.
Yeah, and I like what you said about Fran Brown bringing in the energy, because he's from that part of the world originally. Like, that's why he knows the New Jersey recruiting landscape so well. And Tennessee's gotten some guys from that area in the past, most notably a quarterback that was a little bit riddled with hatred that he may have not deserved in Jarrett Garantano. I think it's more of the coaching staff to blame for what happened there. But he was down in SEC country for a little while with Kirby Smart at Georgia. And usually when you see position coaches take on the head coaching job at a Power 4 school, you're like, really? Is that what they're going to do here? But it's completely different with Fran Brown. I totally get it, because he knows that area. You need to be able to recruit that area when you're up there. And obviously Babers was not doing it well. And I think people that grew up over the last 20 years don't have the same kind of appreciation for Syracuse football that people who are in their 40s by now have, because they have pumped out a lot of not just great football players, but great athletes over the years there too. You look back at that 1998 game between Tennessee and Syracuse that Tennessee got out alive in. There were some great players on the other side.
I don't want to talk about that game.
There were a lot of great players on the other side for Syracuse. Donovan McNabb, Keith Bullock. I'm a big Titans fan, and we love Keith Bullock down here in Tennessee for sure. And then, of course, you can't not mention Syracuse and the late, great Jim Brown in the same sentence. Like, there have been some stellar players to come through that program in the past, and it has been kind of sad to see the transition to the ACC, just because you had this big, beautiful league called the Big East that once existed, and Syracuse was a team you could count on being great in that conference most seasons. And it's just like once they shifted to the ACC, and things just kind of fell apart for a while. And it's not as if the ACC has many programs that have been continuously successful over the last 10 or 15 years, right? Like Florida State fell apart after Jimbo Fisher won that national title. It was kind of a slow death for a bit, but it's been more pronounced here lately. Miami's been like a 6 or 7 win team in a lot of seasons over the course of its time in the ACC. Louisville is a program that despite having some highs, it's fallen off hard. Like the year after Lamar Jackson left, they were 2-10. So I absolutely think Syracuse is one of the more underappreciated programs in the ACC.
You are 100% right on that. And that's one thing that Fran Brown really emphasized when his message is why not Syracuse, essentially, because historically, not recent, but historically, they're actually a pretty good program. If you go look at the college programs that have produced the most pro football Hall of Famers, you might be surprised, but Syracuse is actually one of the leaders. They're ahead of a lot of big name programs out there. They're among the schools that somehow they produce a lot of Hall of Famers. And you know what? You go back and you look at the history and say, you know what? Jim Brown, Ernie Davis won a Heisman Trophy. You got Floyd Little. You mentioned some of the players from the 98 team as well. So many great players have come through Syracuse. It kind of died in the early to mid 2000s. And Fran Brown is trying to reestablish that culture that, hey, Syracuse football was once really good. Syracuse football was once one of those teams you looked at on the schedule and said, uh-oh, we got to play Syracuse this year non-conference, or in their conference, uh-oh, we got Syracuse this year on the road, or here comes Syracuse to town. That's not going to be an easy game for our program. If this was 25, 30 years ago and you're talking about Tennessee and Syracuse, like we mentioned, talking about 98 and everything, I don't want to keep rehashing that game, but that's a game Tennessee probably looked at that point. I wasn't born yet, and said, hey, going to the Dome, Syracuse in week 1, that's going to be really tough. Whereas you compare it to the modern day right now, and Syracuse still has a lot to prove, you're probably sitting there looking at Syracuse on the schedule in week 1 saying, you better beat them in Atlanta, Georgia on a neutral field. You're a 2-touchdown favorite against this team. So Fran Brown, it is a complete energy shift. He's trying to change the culture of the program. And this is a monumental year to do that, because it's one thing to do it once. It's another thing to do it twice with a brand new roster and a tougher schedule on paper.
Yeah, and it's funny because you could say all those same things that you mentioned with, Syracuse once being great. It's the same thing with Tennessee. Not as many people who are our age really have the understanding, outside of the people who are fans of those programs, that that program was once stellar. Like, it was feared in the SEC, but it just lost that over a 10 or 15-year period. I want to transition to something that you actually just mentioned, and that is the schedule for Syracuse. I am an avid Phil Steele reader. I've been getting his magazine like every year for the last 14 years. And I was looking in there just to see who the toughest schedules are across the league. I think not the league, the country, but I think he has Syracuse ranked as number 5 in terms of toughest schedules in the country. And you get past that Tennessee game, I do not envy that road schedule. You've got Clemson, SMU, Georgia Tech, Miami, and Notre Dame all on the road, which are all incredibly losable games. Like, Tennessee does not envy that schedule at all, because Kentucky and Mississippi State are at least 2 of the road games this year. Realistically, knowing all that, what is the ceiling for this Syracuse team with all of the unknowns associated with it right now?
Great question. So I'm going to propose a question to you. How about that before I answer? When Georgia gets their schedule, do they whine and complain about how tough it is?
No.
How about Ohio State? When they get their schedule every year, do they whine and complain about that? How tough it is?
That is the approach Fran Brown is taking, is what you're telling me.
If you're a good team, aren't you allowed to beat other good teams? I'm not going to sit here and say the ceiling's a national championship. It's not. Okay? I'm being realistic here. The ceiling, best case scenario, everything breaks right. Maybe you get 8-9 wins. You can try to replicate what you did last year. And I think the floor is lower than it was last year. Last year, the schedule came out and I was like, they're going to make a bowl at minimum. This year, yeah, they got some tough teams. And if they're not a very good team this year, they will miss a bowl. But good teams find a way to, at minimum, make a bowl. Like, that is a very reasonable expectation for Syracuse football. You are in year 2. The roster, despite it being completely different, still on paper has more talent than previous Syracuse teams of the past. They should find a way to at least squeak out 6 to 7 wins on the schedule. And maybe, or just maybe, One of those can be against Tennessee. It's week 1. Tennessee's breaking in new players too. You're technically on a neutral field. Can you pull off an upset? We're going to find out on Saturday. But the point being is that if you want to be a really good program, you're going to have to beat other good teams. If you eventually want to be a national championship team, you're also going to have to beat really good teams. I've never heard of a national champion saying, we won because we didn't play anybody. We went the whole year, and all we got to do was play against 13 MAC opponents, and then we got to the college football playoff, and we got matched up against Colgate 4 times. It's just not how it works. So, yeah, the schedule's tough. I acknowledge that. It probably limits any sort of natural progression from last year to this year in terms of, you won 9 games last year. Maybe you can win 10, 11 this year. It also lowers the floor a little bit. But that being said, if Syracuse is a good team, they are going to find a way to maybe steal a couple of games that people don't expect them to steal.
Yeah, I think that's a great indicator and something that we should look more at for strength of schedule, like as opposed to, looking at what Kurt Signetti's doing over there at Indiana. It's just laughable for some of us SEC folks looking up and saying, "Oh, I'm taking an SEC scheduling model." Kennesaw State, Old Dominion, and Indiana State is not SEC scheduling at all, and especially beating up on 5 and 7 teams repeatedly with that whole deal where all their major programs are just missing each other on the schedules each season. But I did want to ask you about something that you did mention very briefly just now. What is your honest opinion of neutral games?
I actually don't really like neutral games.
Me too.
I'm not a neutral site fan really at all. Every sport pretty much does it, except for NBA doesn't do it. MLB doesn't do it. I guess the NHL doesn't do it either, but football, you have the Super Bowl. I'm not a neutral site fan. I like having a home crowd, home team that most people are cheering for, and I like the silence when the home team doesn't do well. I think that's part of sports. It's kind of weird when you have a neutral site game and there's just cheering throughout the game. And now I'm not expecting a 50-50 split. It's not going to be a 50-50 split down in Atlanta, but you're going to hear cheering both sides. When Syracuse hopefully scores some touchdowns, you're going to hear the Syracuse fans. When Tennessee does it, you're going to hear the Tennessee fans. I'm someone that no matter what, I've gone back and forth on this, but over time I've been like, you know what? I hate neutral field in general. I want home games and road games because if you truly are the best, forget the neutral field. If you're the best, you can also go on the road and win these games. I would play the Super Bowl at home. That's how crazy I am at this point. Like I do not like the neutral site. I think it creates a very weird crowd dynamic. Home game or home team, road team, and may the best team win.
Yeah, and it's something that really you can sell to your recruits as well when you're doing these home games, the home and homes as opposed to the neutral site venues. I mean, it's not that Florida and Georgia and Oklahoma and Texas are hurting for talent necessarily, but that's something that you don't have that luxury with in getting those games at home. Here's something weird that just popped into my head, and this will be the case at least until the year 2028. The headliner non-conference game every single year for a Josh Heupel Tennessee team has been an ACC opponent. Because you had that Pittsburgh series the first 2 seasons, one of which was the Kenny Pickett team that came into Knoxville and beat Tennessee. Tennessee went up there and returned the favor the next year in overtime. And then the last 2 years, you had that Nashville game with Virginia. And then, of course, you had NC State and Charlotte. Got the Syracuse game this year. And they got a home and home with Georgia Tech, which I think technically it's going to be at a neutral venue in 2026 because they have to play a certain number of games at the Georgia Dome, which I hate. Love to see that game in Bobby Dodd Stadium, but it kind of stinks. And another thing that stinks too is Nebraska was the one to opt out of a home and home previously with Tennessee. So they sent Tennessee scrambling. Obviously, I'm glad that they made it happen, but I am still bummed about that for sure.
Didn't Nebraska do it because they wanted to not just duck Tennessee, but just duck anyone good in non-conference play?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think you need at least one power conference, non-conference team out there because at the end of the day, you schedule these games so far in advance, it's almost impossible to truly know how good a team is going to be in 2028 and 2029. Like after this, I think Syracuse again next year, they're going to play Notre Dame. You got to figure they're going to be good, but there's no guarantee. But at least they already have them on the schedule. I think this year, maybe a little bit too overboard going Tennessee and Notre Dame in the same year when you're also playing Clemson on the road. I don't think you had to do that if you were Syracuse, but at least schedule or try to schedule one tough non-conference opponent per year, at least someone who's in a power conference or independent like a Notre Dame. Because after Notre Dame in 2026, I believe Syracuse opens up 2027 at Penn State. Penn State might stink. I have no idea. They're probably not going to stink. They're probably going to be really good. But the point being is that for many years now, Syracuse is going to be playing at least one tough non-conference opponent every year.
Yeah. And that's something that the Big Ten has ducked out of for whatever reason. The SEC required when it moved up to the 9-game schedule this week that you play at least one major opponent out of conference. Of course, some teams didn't have to worry about that because they've already got the non-conference rivalries. Teams like Kentucky, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina is in that conversation as well. It opens the door for Bedlam to resume between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, which I think would also be good for the sport. But yeah, it's just funny to hear that from Big Ten folks. Like, yeah, they don't play as many conference games, but you don't have that rule in place now where you have to schedule that tough non-conference opponent. So it does kind of stink that they're being rewarded for that a little bit.
Well, there was that. The issue was the system that was in place, and they kind of tweaked the college football playoff system now where it rewarded record a lot. And record is definitely something that matters. I'm someone who will go on Locked On ACC and say, look at their records. Like records definitely matter, but also who you play, who you beat, who you lose to. Average margin of victory matters because at the end of the day, it's college sports. A lot of it is style points, whether we like it or not. It's just how it is. I wish that were to be changed one day. It's just the reality of how it is. Most of it is style points anyway. But now with the new system that seems to be in place, they are going to reward you if you play against really good non-conference teams. If you beat up on them, great. You're not going to be rewarded that much, though. If you lose to a good out-of-conference team, no biggie. If LSU goes on the road and they lose to Clemson, assuming that they keep it relatively close and Clemson's a good team for the rest of the year, is there really any shame in that if you're LSU? If you end up going 10-2, 9-3? Probably not.
Hey, man, we're all just mad that Tennessee got sent to Ohio State and instead of getting that home game against SMU last year. That's what you could have gotten instead had it been the straight seeding model. But hindsight is always 2020.
No, at the end of the day, Tucker, sorry to cut you off there.
No, you're good.
I know I'm on a Tennessee thing right now, but you guys know the truth. I mean, it didn't matter. Tennessee wasn't going to win. They weren't going to win. Like they did not show up at Ohio State. Well, it makes you think that if they got SMU in the first round, that I don't know if they would have beaten SMU. Maybe they would have beaten SMU. Probably would have at least been favored. They weren't winning the national title anyway, so it's all water under the bridge.
No, but a Rose Bowl appearance would have been cool. It's something you don't see much in the SEC.
True.
All right, we got to get into this matchup and talk specifically about what Syracuse has going this year. So, obviously, there is a new quarterback in town for the Orange. That is Steve Angeli, the Notre Dame transfer. It's really funny that he is the starting quarterback for Syracuse because he announced his intention to hit the transfer portal right after Nico did. So all the Tennessee fans were like, "You're a Vol. Mm-hmm. You're a Vol, Steve. Come here." And, of course, that wasn't the case. I don't know if Tennessee was actually interested in him. I don't know if it would have been a good fit. But, of course, they got Joey Aguilar instead. What are the big differences, you think, between Kyle McCord and Steve Angeli, just from what we know, because Steve has, of course, not played a ton of games on the big stage?
When Kyle McCord got to Syracuse, I had no question, no doubt in my mind that he was going to be good. Did I think he was going to be all ACC? I actually did pick him to be all second team all ACC, but did I think he was going to set ACC records that were previously held by Deshaun Watson? No. So he was even better than I thought he was going to be. He got an unfair rap over at Ohio State. He leads that program to 11-1. I thought he got unfairly penalized because he wasn't his previous 3 quarterbacks over there at Ohio State. Ohio State, they're ridiculous with their talent. Their quarterbacks each of the past 3 times, they were Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, all first-round NFL draft picks. So in comes Kyle McCord. He's not a first-round NFL pick. He's not a first-round NFL talent. We just saw him actually cut in training camp. I'm sorry to Kyle McCord. I hope it all works out for him in the NFL. But he was still really good in college. Goes on the road, 1-score game against Michigan, loses. That's the team that won the national championship game. In a different year, actually, if it was 2024, Ohio State would have made the playoff anyway. They could have won the national championship in 2023 as well with Kyle McCord. But it was a 4-team system. We saw an undefeated Florida State not even make the playoff that year. They kind of got screwed. He gets run out of town. Obviously, it worked out for Ohio State getting Will Howard and winning the national title. It also worked out for Syracuse. There was no doubt in my mind Kyle McCord was going to be really good for that program. Fast forward to Steve Angeli now. He does not have that experience that Kyle McCord has. They might be similar in terms of how they play, but Steve Angeli, how many pass attempts does he have in his career? 80, I think. 1 career start, which came in the 2023 Sun Bowl against Oregon State. Okay, so you got to start. 1 brief drive, albeit a very good drive, against Penn State in the college football semifinal last year. We don't have much on Steve Angeli, if we're being honest. The only thing that I take away from him, though, that gives me some sort of confidence is that he didn't transfer out of Notre Dame in the fall. Notre Dame gave him a legitimate chance to be the starting quarterback. And by my logic, Notre Dame's a really good program. If they don't believe in you, they're going to tell you and they're going to let you go. They don't really care. It's Notre Dame. They want to win a national championship every single year. That is the standard of the program. They thought he had at least an outside chance that he could be the starting quarterback for Notre Dame in 2025. So there's something there with Steve Angeli. There's also a relationship with the Syracuse coaching staff. Fran Brown was very familiar with him in the Northeast, but also Steve Angeli's high school coach is the brother of Syracuse quarterbacks coach Nunzio Campanelli. So when he hit the portal, yes, everyone was saying, hey, Tennessee Volunteers, Tennessee Volunteers. I didn't know for sure if Syracuse was actually going to get Steve Angeli. I did know that they were going to show interest. I did know that there were relationships already there. So when they got him, I wasn't really that surprised at all. And once he picked up the system, he beats out Ricky Collins. Now he's the starting quarterback. So go back to your question, though. I just had more faith with Kyle McCord because we had more experience with Kyle McCord than we do with Steve Angeli.
It's interesting you say that it's a possibility or really something that gives you hope, I should say, that he transferred in the spring as opposed to the fall window, because usually you don't like having to hear quarterbacks pick up systems on the fly by any means. And it's certainly the case with what happened with Tennessee and Nico, that whole mess, and then having to get Joey Aguilar after that. We don't know this for sure, but it could very well be Joey Aguilar goes out, does not have a good game, and you could see Jake Merklinger come in possibly to relieve him, because it was very much a 2-man quarterback battle, it felt like, between the guys at Tennessee. Obviously, George McIntyre was another coveted 5-star from within the state's borders, but I just don't think he's quite ready yet. Is there a possibility that you see Ricky Collins potentially take some snaps if, say, things aren't going well, Steve, for Steve Angeli on Saturday?
Yeah. I'll answer that question in a second, but to just go back to your point, or my point that I was making about Angeli transferring in the spring, it wasn't necessarily about the playbook and everything and my confidence in that. It's more so about his ability and the fact that Notre Dame felt, hey, he might actually have a chance to be a starter for us in 2025. If Notre Dame is saying that he has a chance to be a starter in 2025 for them at quarterback, that gives me hope that there's definitely some talent there with Steve Angeli. But back to your point or question about Ricky Collins, I think Fran Brown's going to rock with his guy. Okay. Barring a Nathan Peterman first start with the Buffalo Bills type performance in the first half, I think Steve Angeli is going to play most, if not all, the snaps, of course, knock on wood for injury. Last year, I felt maybe they do a 2-quarterback system at times where there's certain situations where they would put in the backup, because the backup last year for Syracuse was definitely more athletic. In fact, when he transferred over to Syracuse, it was from FAU. His position tag read weapon. I don't know exactly what that means, but I guess what it means is like he's just an athlete. He can run around. So I thought, hey, maybe Syracuse in certain situations they would use him. They did not use him. So with Ricky Collins, they're keeping the same system. It's for the most part the same coaching staff. I think they're going to rock with Steve Angeli, barring some injury or catastrophic start to the game.
It's funny you brought up Nathan Peterman. He had another disastrous start for Tennessee as well. Don't know why Butch Jones thought it would be a good idea to start him against Florida in the Swamp, even though Florida ended up being terrible that year. They lost Jeff Driscoll, and by Tennessee's luck, they still won that game by 2 touchdowns. That's just what happens when Tennessee goes to the Swamp. We'll see what happens when Tennessee gets to that bridge this year, because it's been 22 years since they've won a game down there. And even when Florida stinks, they still beat Tennessee in the Swamp, which is not a good sign for Tennessee this year.
It's not an easy place to play.
No.
Never been there. It doesn't matter if they're good or bad. It's especially when they're good, it's hard to play there. But even when they're bad, it's not fun playing in the Swamp. I've won to one Florida game. It was in 2021. They weren't very good that year. They kept it very close with Alabama. It was a week 3 game, so that they were both ranked. Emory Jones was the quarterback. He wasn't very good. Bama was a good team that year, obviously. They had Bryce Young, who won the Heisman Trophy. It's not easy to play in the Swamp. I'm not saying it's excusable. That's been 22 years or something for Tennessee, but it ain't easy, no matter who you are.
Yeah, naturally he ran all over Tennessee the following week too, and then they fell off a cliff later on that season. Just what happens with Florida after they play Tennessee every year. So looking around at this offense, there's some other notable losses from this offense as well. LaQuinn Allen obviously gone at running back, so you're looking at a new face there. You've got most of the best receivers gone as well. Of course, Jackson Meeks gone on to the NFL. Did unfortunately see that he got cut with Hendon Hooker by the Lions. And then, of course, Trevor Pena transfers to Penn State, which if he's still eligible by next season, I guess that could make for a pretty interesting game between Syracuse and Penn State. Who should we be looking for on the offensive side of the ball for Syracuse?
Well, Trevor Pena is out of eligibility, so that we don't have to worry about that. And also, Penn State, I don't think it's till 2027. So no matter what,
definitely not.
They're not facing Trevor Pena. And quick story, by the way, with him. I remember covering the whole Nico situation with Tennessee because it relates to Syracuse. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday, where I was saying, "Hey guys, Tennessee, I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback for week 1 against Syracuse. Obviously, that's why it's important." This situation could also happen to Syracuse, by the way. The very next day, Trevor Pena enters the transfer portal, and it wasn't pretty when he entered the transfer portal, to say the least. Don't want to get too much into that, though. But as far as the offense, brand new offensive line, I think 4 or 5 transfers are going to start for Syracuse. There's only 5 starters along the offensive line, so at least 80% is going to be brand new for Syracuse. Darrell Gill is someone to definitely keep an eye on. He's going to be their wide receiver 1 this upcoming season. Last year, you look at his numbers on face value. They're not overly impressive. About 500 yards, 30 catches, a few touchdowns. So you might be saying, Darrell Gill, he's nothing. Like, he can really be a wide receiver 1. It is a fair question if he can be a wide receiver 1, but keep in mind, Darrell Gill put up those numbers as Syracuse's 5th option on the offense last year. So when he got on the field, he was very, very productive for this team. He's now entering his 3rd year of college football. You've already seen that natural progression from him as a true freshman to a sophomore. Now he's a junior. I think we're going to see a big year from Darrell Gill. Hopefully he can perform against this Tennessee team. Opposite side of him, you got Justice Ross Simmons. He's a Colorado State transfer from a couple years ago. He was very good at Colorado State. High hopes for him last season. But unfortunately, towards the end of fall camp, he was dealing with a hamstring injury. By the time he kind of got healthy, he had been lapped on the depth chart. You had guys like Jackson Meeks, Darrell Gill, who all took all the touches away from a guy like Justice Ross Simmons, including also the guys that were already there with Aronde Gadsden, LaQuinn Allen, and Pena stepping up and having a big season. So we're hoping that he can kind of live up to the hype just 1 year later than he was supposed to. And then the slot, maybe the most interesting player on the Syracuse team. He's a 5-star recruit as recent as 2023. His name is Jonte Cook. He played in the SEC. He was at Texas for the past 2 seasons. It just did not work out for him. And his numbers, they don't jump off the page, but this is someone who's got elite speed. He's an electric talent. We're hoping he can replace Trevor Pena from what he did a year ago. And now we're hoping that, look, he's got an opportunity with Syracuse. He's going to see the field. Fran Brown's his coach, kind of taking him under his wing here, get his attitude right and everything like that. All right, Jonte Cook, let's see your talent against a team like Tennessee. I actually have faith that even though this wide receiver core is kind of unproven for Syracuse, that they're actually going to be pretty good this season. I'm not necessarily worried about them. The Jeff Nixon offense, he's the offensive coordinator for Syracuse. It's back for another year. Offense, I'm not too worried about it. I know that Tennessee's got a great defense. The one area of concern, I guess, on the offense is really the offensive line. Everywhere else, they should be pretty good.
Yeah. And you didn't mention him, but Yassine Willis is still back at running back, right? And he actually reminds me a little bit of a guy that Tennessee had last year by the name of Cam Seldon. He's transferred to Virginia Tech, and they've converted him to a wide receiver because that's what he played in high school. But just kind of a tall bruiser of a running back.
Yep.
I know he didn't do a ton for Syracuse last season, but I think I saw him in what game was that? Maybe the UNLV game, that Friday night game that Syracuse went out there and won. And I thought that guy could be really good at the time. But I am very intrigued to see what will happen between this Tennessee DB group and this receiver core for Syracuse, because Tennessee is very good on the defensive end, as you acknowledged. We're still trying to figure out what Jermon McCoy will look like because he's rehabbing or has finished rehabbing from that ACL tear. Apparently, he's looked good in practice, but who really knows what goes on in practice? There was a situation in spring ball in which we thought Ricky Gibson would transfer out of Tennessee, but he's coming back and really one of the more under-the-radar pieces of that DB room last year for Tennessee. So they got him back. I guess the only real concern over there is what you got going at strong safety, because there's some sophomores in this group that could be really good. They were highly coveted recruits coming in, but they just don't have a ton of experience. You had a guy in Jacoby Thomas last year who was a fun ad from the transfer portal out of MTSU. He bolted for Miami in the spring as well. So really looking forward to that matchup between the receivers and the DBs.
Absolutely. And this is one thing that I'm really stressing with a lot of Syracuse fans. It's, okay, we can sit here and we can make fair points about Tennessee and we can try to poke some holes and see, hey, where can Syracuse potentially take advantage? One example is if you switch gears and you talk about the Tennessee offense, hey, they don't have Dylan Sampson. I don't care who you are. That's a pretty big loss. Look at their depth, though. Look at who Tennessee has maybe replacing them. And oftentimes you'll say, okay, maybe he's unproven, but that's a 4-star out of high school. That's a 5-star out of high school. That guy seems like he's primed to be good. Similar to how we're with Syracuse, where, okay, Jonte Cook, we're pretty hopeful he's going to have a good year. We're pretty hopeful Daryl Gill's ready. We're pretty hopeful that Justice Ross Simmons is going to be able to step up and be a wide receiver too for this team. Same thing with Tennessee. We can sit here and poke the holes and be like, I don't know how they're going to do if they don't have Jermon McCoy. Well, chances are his backup is a 4-star recruit out of high school, if we're being fair. He's got talent. You got to have talent to play at Tennessee. You look at their recruiting classes year over year. This is why I have so much respect for Tennessee and why if you listen to Locked On Syracuse, I'm not going to be sitting here saying, hey, guys, I think Syracuse has got them. I think they got their number here. My biggest area of concern, though, is up front, both sides of the ball. I think Tennessee can potentially win this game with Joey Aguilar attempting 15 or less passes. If Tennessee truly commits to the run game, is Syracuse really going to be able to stop it? I'm not so sure. And if Syracuse is able to stop it, chances are they're going to be loading the box to do it. Well, now you look at their wide receivers, which I get it. Tennessee, they don't have a lot of scholarship wide receivers, but go look at the talent that they still have in the room as far as where they were coming out of high school. A lot of 4-star, 5-star talent in there. Syracuse is a young secondary. So even if you're able to bottle up that run game, can you win those one-on-one matchups on the outside at corner and at safety? It's going to be tough for Syracuse to win this game. Like I can see a world where Syracuse pulls off the upset. I'm not going to sit here and write Syracuse off. I'm an objective. I try to be as objective as possible, even though I am a Syracuse fan and Syracuse alum. I'm giving them a puncher's chance. And I think the FanDuel odds tell you exactly that. 13.5-point underdog, you got a chance. You got a shot. Their best shot is honestly, Joey Aguilar puts the ball in harm's way. We saw him do that at Appalachian State. He's got a pretty high turnover rate, lots of interceptions over the past couple of seasons. If and when he makes a mistake, Syracuse has got to be there to make the big play. Think about it this way, Tucker. When Syracuse knocked off Miami last season, they knocked them off at the end of the year. It was a big upset. Everyone was so thrilled, especially if you're a Syracuse fan. Not so if you're a Miami fan, but a lot of people were happy about it. It was a pretty cool moment, right? The turning point of that game, and even though it was a tie game at this point, it was in the third quarter, Devin Grant comes up with a scoop and score. That's something that Syracuse needs in order to beat Tennessee. You're going to need a pick six against Joey Aguilar. You're going to need a scoop and score. Someone fumbles for Tennessee. The ball's going to have to break their way at one point. And if you're Syracuse, you got to be basically mistake-free. You get maybe one turnover. You're not going to win this game with two or more. You need maybe one. And that's about it. It's going to be tough for Syracuse. They have a chance. I'm not going to pick them, though.
All right. That I don't know if that raises my confidence or what. You're sandbagging a little bit here, so I don't know if I like the sound of that necessarily. But I do think you make a good point about the trenches, though, being very important and something Tennessee could potentially exploit. Because and it could be the case for Tennessee on the offensive line too. But I've mentioned this a lot on our live show, but. The offensive lines, if they have not played a ton of football together, that can be problematic the first few weeks of the season. Tennessee does have some very nice pieces up front, but we just need to see it gel together, I think is the big thing that we're all looking for in this game. But looking at the defensive side of the ball, who I should say, are some players we should be looking out for to make plays for Syracuse?
Yeah, so speaking of the secondary for Syracuse, they got the second youngest player in all of college football, a 4-star recruit out of Florida. His name is Demetrius Samuel Jr. He's going to start for Syracuse.
Is he only 17?
He's only 17.
Oh, dear. Not this again.
That's what I'm saying. Like, okay, maybe he does do well. Maybe he is Ryan Williams of the defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of unknowns with Syracuse football, just like there is with Tennessee. So who do you give more benefit of the doubt to? Tennessee. Like, that's just naturally what it is. And it's up to Syracuse to be able to prove it wrong. So Demetrius Samuel, he's one guy that I'm eyeing. I want him to make a play, hopefully. He's only 17. Opposite of him, you got Chris Peel. Georgia transfer. I believe he's making his first career start, though. He's entering his third year in college. Couldn't really get on the field at Georgia, which is understandable. It's Georgia. Great players can come from that program who don't get on the field for that program. You mentioned Jackson Meeks getting cut by the Detroit Lions. Jackson Meeks could barely get on the field over at Georgia. We saw what he did last year at Syracuse. I think most programs in the country would have happily taken Jackson Meeks had they realized he was really that good. Maybe Chris Beal is the same way. Former 4-star guy in 2023. Fran Brown actually recruited him. He's giving him a chance. Time to be a starting corner. You got Tennessee in week 1. I love it. We're going to find out so much. I don't know how much Tennessee is really going to learn from this game, because if Tennessee bludgeons Syracuse, and they might, okay, great. You beat Syracuse. Maybe just Syracuse stinks this year. We're going to learn a lot about Syracuse, though, in this one. If they find a way to pull off that upset, I think you're going to look at that roster in a week or two and say, maybe that wasn't such a bad loss. Maybe they are really a good team because they're kind of young. They're inexperienced. They're getting kind of thrown into the fire here. Week 1 in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's something that you bring up. If Tennessee beats up on Syracuse, Tennessee's not going to learn much about itself. That's kind of what happened with that NC State game last year. It was a little bit of a sense of false hope that Tennessee was given. It still made the college football playoff. It was a great year. But you go into that Oklahoma game thinking, okay, you got some fun weapons out there at receiver. You can run all over teams. Let's see what this is all about. And then you exit that game and you're thinking, okay, maybe they were just holding back, because Oklahoma's defense was very good last year. It just had one of the worst Oklahoma offenses I've ever seen, probably the worst, if we're being real. But then Tennessee got to the Arkansas game, and it was like, oh no, Nico is not ready. We were given all kinds of false hope from that NC State game. And truthfully, Tennessee played like a B game against NC State and won that game by 41 points. You had a lot of turnovers forced on the defensive end, but Nico threw a pick 6 in that game. He threw another interception earlier on over the course of the game too. And those really hurt Tennessee, I think, that just not getting that kind of experience in the passing game and developing it early. And that's one thing I'm looking forward to seeing from Tennessee, is if you can develop some roles in the passing game, so to speak. You didn't have that last year. It's had that the last few seasons, or the previous few seasons in the Heupel era, but it did not have it last season. And I think that's something that ultimately hurt Tennessee a little bit.
100%. I think with Joey Aguilar, if he plays a really good game, I don't want to necessarily put a number on it, Tennessee's not going to lose. It's as simple as that. Because Syracuse is going to do everything in its power to stop the run. We know that Tennessee is a run-first team over the past few years under Josh Heupel. You can go look at the numbers, fact-check me all you want. Look at the splits. They run the ball more often than they throw every year under Josh Heupel. That tells you they're probably going to run the football a lot against Syracuse. And Syracuse is going to do everything in its power to try to stop the run. And let's hope Syracuse magically, their defensive line's able to step up. Offensive line for Tennessee kind of shaky in the run game a little bit. All of a sudden, you're able to bottle them up. Maybe they're missing Dylan Sampson, right? If Joey Aguilar says, okay, well, you're going to stop our run, but I'm going to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, it doesn't matter. Like, they have multiple ways in my mind that they can beat Syracuse. The only way I think Syracuse can really win is if Joey Aguilar does not play well, on top of the fact that they're able to at least slow down this run game. And then you got to worry about scoring enough points against the Tennessee defense and also not turning the ball over. All right.
So would you say those are keys potentially to the game, or do you have a more set list of keys that you would go to for a Syracuse victory?
So to be more specific on keys, back to my point about Joey Aguilar, you got to get Tennessee behind the sticks. Okay. You got to get them into some uncomfortable situations on 2nd and 3rd down. I think for Tennessee, you got to limit penalties. Penalties are a killer. If you start committing holding calls and false starts and all that nonsense that doesn't need to be in the game, and when I say that, I mean you don't need to do that. Those are unforced errors if you're Tennessee. You should be fine, because you're going to be able to run. You're going to be 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4. You'll be able to be so flexible on offense and keep Syracuse's defense on its heels and using that tempo that they love to run. If you're Syracuse, you got to do everything in your power to try to get them behind the sticks. You're going to have to find tackles for loss. You're going to have to make sacks. Next key is you got to make that one big play. Maybe even 2, but at least one big defense special teams play. We're talking about block punt for a touchdown, kick return, punt return, onside kick maybe. You want to try an onside kick? I'm all for it. Maybe you go for it in unconventional situations, because Syracuse, I don't think they have great kickers. Maybe you just said, screw the kicking game. We're playing Tennessee. We're 2 touchdown underdogs. Let's go for it. 4th and 5 from the 20. I have more faith than maybe in the offense to be able to pick up the 5 yards than, say, a 37-yard field goal. So it's got to be aggressive. So I would say the 3 keys are keep Tennessee behind the sticks. Second key is make one big defense or special teams play. And the third is to be aggressive.
So you just mentioned General Nealon's maxims there with the kicking game. Press the kicking game. Here's where the breaks are made. That's a Tennessee thing, obviously, but I do believe that's very important. Don't know if that's as important for Tennessee in this game and trying to get something going on the in the special teams part of the game. But I just don't know what Tennessee has there in some areas just yet. I know Max Gilbert is a good kicker, and then obviously, or can be a really good kicker. He was promising last year, although he did fall into a little bit of a slump. I think it was the Kentucky week where he missed like 2 or 3 field goals in that game, some of which were very makeable. Never trust college kickers, man.
No, I never trust them. Even the good ones I don't trust.
Yeah. And then you look at the other parts of the special teams. Jackson Ross is in his 3rd year as a punter. And then it's kind of up in the air with the whole Boo Carter thing again. He's the most natural punt returner this team has. Is he actually going to play? We'll find out the answer on Saturday because Josh Heupel doesn't have to turn in any availability reports this week, which is a huge help to him. But you're absolutely right about the penalties. Tennessee is awful with penalties.
Yeah, that's not good for them in this type of game. If you're breaking in a new quarterback, just like Syracuse is, but I kind of chuckle when Tennessee fans are like, all right, we're going to make Steve Angeli throw. Well, I chuckle at it because I think that's exactly what Syracuse is going to do. They're going to come out throwing. That's what they did all last season, and all we have is last season to base everything off of. They're going to come out and throw the ball, and if you're Tennessee, they're going to come out running, and they're probably going to be able to run the ball at a high level. But if you're committing penalties, now you're 2nd and 20. I don't know. Are you going to run in on 2nd and 20? You're probably going to have to throw. So I think for Tennessee, their keys are very simple. Joey Aguilar, don't put the ball in harm's way. Number 2, get your playmakers in space. Force the Syracuse athletes to really make those tackles in the open field. I'm not sure they can. They were not a good tackling team last season. Number 3 is the penalties. Limit the penalties as much as possible. You'll keep yourself ahead of the sticks. You'll be fine.
So if you had to name one area that is a big threat to Syracuse from Tennessee, what is it? And if you had to name one area that Syracuse could threaten Tennessee a lot in this game, what would that be?
So the one that scares me for Tennessee is their run game. It's their offensive line. They're big, they're mean, they're physical. They're going to be in your face. They're going to be up tempo. It's going to be hard for Syracuse to be able to rotate their defensive linemen every single play. So I'm scared of the run game. For Syracuse, you got a good passing game, or at least you had one last year. You come out throwing in this Jeff Nixon offense. You also like to get, or Syracuse, I should say, likes to get guys in the open field, force Tennessee to make some tackles as well. That's something that I think Syracuse can hang their hat on and say, if the defense can't really make many stops, well, our offense perhaps can be able to respond. Even though Tennessee's got a great defense, at the end of the day, it's college football. College football, there's just more scoring. I can't necessarily explain it, but sometimes it's just you can have a great defense and let up 30 points, and we consider that a great defense. I don't know why. It's just how it is. Last year against Miami, Miami had the number 1 defense in the ACC. Did anyone think Miami had a good defense? No. They fired their defensive coordinator. Miami didn't even think they had a good defense. They were number 1 in the conference. And Syracuse handled that Miami defense no problem. Tennessee, different animal. They are better than that Miami defense was, no doubt. Can they score 25, 30 points? They might. It's college football. It's more open. Maybe. So if you're Syracuse, it's that passing game. And for Tennessee, it's that run game.
Yeah, 31 is the most Tennessee allowed in the regular season before that bloodbath up there at Ohio State to any opponent, actually, because in all the wins, I think Vanderbilt was the game that Tennessee allowed the most points in SEC play, and
right
that they won. I should specify, but most of those were not really on the defense. One was a touchdown on the first play of the game, the opening kickoff. The other was just Vanderbilt getting a short field because Dylan Sampson lost a fumble early in that game. But it's going to be challenging for Syracuse, I think, in that regard, because Tennessee was laughably bad at tackling in the open field 3 years ago. It's not like that anymore with the DBs that you see on this team. And that's one place I think Ricky Gibson really does shine for this team, is his ability to tackle in the open field is something we hadn't seen from some of the other corners previously. And, you know, those receivers going at it with the DBs, again, we keep highlighting it. Tennessee lost that game to Ohio State last year partially because for one, you have the absolute freak of freaks and Jeremiah Smith
The whole
in
team
that
lost.
game.
That was just an ugly, ugly game. That game was over in the first quarter. I turned it off.
Yeah, it got bad. It got really bad, man. I was just sitting. That's not one of those games where you rage out at the TV. You just sit there in silence for 3 quarters.
I totally feel you. I totally feel you. That's how I was with Syracuse against Pitt last year. I wasn't mad. I was just like stunned. That was the performance.
How do you throw 5 interceptions?
How
in a game?
did that happen? Pitt's a good team. They're not that good.
Yeah.
They turned them into the 85 Bears over here. What's going on?
Yeah.
I do have a stat for you.
All
so
right.
I looked at Josh Heupel since he's taken over with Tennessee in 2021. They've played, I believe, 5 teams, non-conference, but also Power 4, Power 5 schools back in the day when there was a Power 5. Those opponents have averaged about 24 and 25 points per game, somewhere between there, which tells me if you're a good team, you should be able against even a good defense like Tennessee to at minimum put up 20 and possibly be able to put up 30. Can the Syracuse defense hold Tennessee under 25 to 30 points with Tennessee's run game? What do you think?
Can they do that? Can they hold Tennessee in check? It's just so hard, man, because there is just not a lot of evidence of what this Tennessee team has going into the year. We didn't know what it had going into that Pittsburgh game in 2021 either. It played an okay game against Bowling Green. It was never going to lose that game, but that's where the term overthrow Joe came from Tennessee fans with Joe Milton. Mm-hmm. I do wonder, though, if they start Hendon Hooker, if that game turns out a little bit differently from the offensive end. Obviously, they were terrible defending Kenny Pickett in that game. That's part of the reason why Kenny Pickett was able to fool the Steelers into thinking he was a draftable quarterback.
To be fair, Kenny Pickett, he lit up most defenses that year.
Yeah, he did. And then you look in 22, you knew what you had. 23, obviously, Joe Milton's back in there at quarterback, but you got most of the supporting cast back from the previous year. But the offense just wasn't going to be nearly as good. We knew that going into it. And then last year, there was an expectation that it would get better. This year, it's just such a big question because
it's so unknown. I have no idea.
Because you have a guy in Deshaun Bishop who was really good at times for Tennessee last year in Dylan Sampson's stead. Obviously, he was not the feature of the offense. I liked what he did in some of those games earlier on in the season. He kind of disappeared in SEC play, and part of that is due to injuries. He suffered one against Kentucky that kept him out for basically a month up until either that Vandy game or the Ohio State game. And the year before that, he missed the entire season with something. Not that he was going to play behind Dylan Sampson, Jabari Small, and Jalen Wright. That just wasn't going to happen. But it's a matter of him staying on the field. I do like what he brings to this team, though, just in terms of his ability as a running back. And then the other ones, I think there's still some questions about. How does Star Thomas translate to a bigger stage in the SEC? Syracuse and Duke didn't play each other last year, did they?
They did not, no.
Okay, because he was a running back for Duke last season. So we'll see how he fits into this system.
If Star Thomas played against Syracuse last year, he probably would have run for at least 100 yards. I mean, most of them did. Syracuse's run defense last year was no bueno.
Yeah. So we're going to see what exactly is going on there with those two guys. And then there's another one, too, in Peyton Lewis, who's a freshman, redshirt freshman. Or no, he was a freshman last year. He may be a sophomore this year because he played sparingly last season. I guess he played more when Deshaun Bishop was out those few games in November. Very much feast or famine with him. You were either going to lose 4 yards or gain 8. You just didn't know what you were going to get with Peyton Lewis last season. So I definitely think Tennessee will be able to run the football against Syracuse just because that's what they do. Can they go out there and score 30-plus points like they have in the other openers? I don't know. Josh Heupel has his defense has gotten better as his offense has gotten worse. It kind of feels like. Although they did put up 51 last season on NC State, which is
Right.
the most they had put up in any of those openers. So,
Mhm.
again, who really knows what's going to happen? But I do have faith in this team to put up some points if you were going to ground and pound.
I think with Tennessee, it's going to sound really, I think it's just going to sound super simple. You got to move forward. Like, I don't think lateral plays, I don't know why you would do a bunch of lateral plays against Syracuse. I really don't. I guess that's one way you can try to get them in the open field. But as far as running, it's like the classic Madden. Like, I would just straight up do HB dive every single play and see if Syracuse can stop it. I mean, we're talking about what's that Super Bowl? I think it was Cowboys and Bills. Maybe the first time that drive out of halftime. I think Tennessee should take a play out of that. Maybe they look at the film of that and just go, we're going to right at them. Just go right down the field, every single play, right up the gut. Move forward. The offensive line should be able to move the Syracuse defensive line. Move forward. I think you give Syracuse a shot if you're going to call outside stretch plays and all that stuff and try to get around the edge. Maybe it works out for Tennessee, but honestly, I think their best bet is just go right at them.
Yeah, I think so too. Fortunately for Syracuse, they don't have Jamal Lewis this time around like they did in 1998.
No.
I posted that drive from that game earlier in the week, and
I know I didn't appreciate it.
It was a big part. It was a big part of it.
I did not like it. I didn't watch it either. I gotta say,
they don't like the pass interference penalty that they called up there in White Plains.
What pass interference?
Hey, there was a worse one in that national championship. Was it Miami and Ohio State?
That was awful.
Where they called an incompletion and then
that was the
threw
Maurice
the flag
Claret
afterward,
year, right? That one.
Yeah.
That wasn't that. Yeah, that was the game-winning play. Miami had won.
Yeah, Miami had won, and they just had it taken away from them. So rude there by those officials. All right, one more matter before we get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a score prediction?
Yeah, 31-20 Tennessee.
Okay. What did I say yesterday on the show? I think I said 27-10 Tennessee. I'm going to go a little bit less than that just because I don't know what they're going to be trying to do offensively, but I do think the defense shows up in a big way for Tennessee. Again, we just need to see what these teams have on the field because there are so many unknowns aside from the Tennessee defense.
Yep. I think Syracuse hangs in there. They're within a score in the fourth quarter. They got the football. They're in their own territory. And Steve Angeli throws a back-breaking interception. Tennessee gets the insurance touchdown, and that's how you get 31-20. So I think they'll be down 24-20. We'll have hope. And that's really what I want in this game at the end of the day, not the back-breaking interception or anything like that. I want Syracuse to be within a score in the fourth quarter. Whether they're up a score or down a score, give yourself a shot. Try to plant that seed of doubt into Tennessee because let's just be honest. I mean, I don't think many people are picking Syracuse to win. And I think everyone knows that. Syracuse knows that. Tennessee knows they're supposed to win this game. It's kind of like in March Madness, though. You've experienced this with March Madness. Tennessee's been there over the past few years. When you're the high seed, you're the favorite team, but you're playing against a lesser team, and it's close towards the end of the second half, who does that typically favor? Usually the team that's got, quote-unquote, nothing to lose. If you're Syracuse, if you can kind of plant that seed of doubt into Tennessee, make them kind of sweat, make them kind of feel the pressure of, oh my goodness, are we really going to lose in week one and spoil the whole season? Because let's be honest, Tennessee doesn't win this game, they're not making the playoff. This is it. If Tennessee does not win this game, their season is, I'm sorry, it's done. You're not recovering from it. How you're going to go run the gauntlet of the SEC? You're going to win 10 games without the Syracuse win? I don't think so. You better win this game if you're Tennessee. And if you're Syracuse, you can still make a bowl. We don't have the playoff expectation. You could still make a bowl, though, by losing to Tennessee. So try to plant that seed of doubt in the fourth quarter that maybe, just maybe, we can have an upset here.
Hey, in fairness to Tennessee, I'm not even projecting college football playoff this year. I think most fans are just because of the loss of production that you had in the run game more so than anything, not anything to do with Nico. Because if you look at the mistakes he made last year, they were very bad. Not something a 5-star quarterback is typically going to do. when suiting up for an SEC football team. But no, I'll just tell you right now, I think the big three games on the schedule each year for Tennessee, which are Alabama, Georgia, Florida, are probably losable. I think Tennessee loses in all three of those. Maybe there's a seed of hope against Georgia just because it's a home game and you don't know what exactly they've got going on at quarterback with Gunnar Stockton, that is. We know he's going to start. We just don't know if he's going to be good or not. I just don't know about the other two games. So would really be something if Tennessee were to be 9-2 or 8-2, I should say, going into the swamp there at the end of the season. And that is what is on the line. But again, we will cross that bridge when we get to it. Jackson, appreciate you jumping on with me tonight. Tell us what you got going on over there at Locked On Syracuse.
Sure. Well, you can find all my content wherever you get your podcasts. Just type in Locked On Syracuse on YouTube or your favorite audio platform. You can also follow us on social media at LO_Syracuse.
All right. Appreciate it, Jackson. And we appreciate you guys for watching us tonight. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football Network. For Jackson Holzer, I am Tucker Harlan. We will talk to you again soon.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.